Many parents think that if they don't talk to their children about sensitive issues, their children will remain innocent and ignorant. But the reality is different. When we remain silent, children seek answers on their own, and those answers are not always the right ones. This story is a true story of two families who did not learn to be honest with their children, and the result was something no one could have imagined. Amala was a housewife for whom discipline was a divine law. She believed that the only way for her children to succeed was through strictness and strict control. Her daughter Neka, 13, was quiet, obedient, and always polite. Neka was not allowed to leave the house without permission. Her friends could only come home in her mother's presence, and even entering her parents' room had a rule. She had to knock on the door. On the other hand, Sophia was an energetic woman and a government employee. She worked until evening during the day and often came home tired. However, her cheerful and humorous spirit made her joke about many serious matters, even parenting. Her son, Kemba, was the same age as Neka, a playful, curious, and excitable boy. Sophia usually didn't control him much. She didn't check his homework every day, nor did she know exactly what Kemba was doing at night. Despite these differences, the two families had a close relationship. Amala and Sophia even wanted their children to be close friends like themselves. They often joked in front of the children, "Look, Neka, this is your future husband." Sophia would point to Kemba with a laugh. "Oh, my bride." "Get used to it, my daughter." The children laughed at first, thinking it was just an older joke. But these reckless jokes planted seeds in their minds, seeds that were to germinate dangerously one day. On the surface, everything was normal. The children went to school together in the morning, played in front of their houses in the afternoon, and had dinner with their families in the evening. But behind this calm exterior, there was a big difference in the lifestyles of the two families. Amala's house, law-abiding, orderly, and full of supervision. Sophia's house, more sloppy, freer, and without clear boundaries. This small difference would soon turn both children's worlds upside down. Life in the home of Sophia and her husband Macau was full of energy, but one thing always repeated itself: fatigue. Every night when Sophia came home from work, she could barely walk. They would quickly prepare dinner, sometimes impatiently, even with half-finished dishes, and then go to their room without paying much attention to their surroundings. Kemba had a habit of staying up late at night. Sometimes he would sit in front of the TV. Sometimes he would spend time with his drawing book. He loved drawing, and his teachers at school had often praised his talent. But one night something happened that changed the direction of this interest. That night, the door to his parents' room was left ajar. The yellow light of the lamp was shining through the crack, and an unfamiliar sound echoed in the house. Kemba became curious. Power chain approached. What he saw was incomprehensible to a teenager like him, but at that moment something dawned on him. This is what adults do secretly. When Macau noticed his son's presence, he just said angrily, "Get out! You don't belong here!" Sophia also shouted, "Kemba! You should never come here. Go to sleep." But no one explained. No one tried to understand what he had seen or what was going through his mind. This silence and inattention planted another seed in the boy's mind. From that night on, every time his parents went into the room, Kemba went to the door with even greater curiosity. Sometimes he would listen. Sometimes he would look through the crack. Those scenes became small and exciting secrets that he carried with him. Sometime later, these secrets found their way to his drawing room. Kemba began to draw lines that he had not dared to show in art class. He himself did not know exactly why he did it, but every time he filled the white paper with those images, he felt that something had spilled out of him. One day, when Sophia entered her son's room, she saw the notebook on the table. But she was so tired of the work that she did not even bother to turn the pages. She just said, "Great. You really are an artist," and left, without knowing what her son had hidden. This inattention was like gasoline on a newly lit fire. Kemba now felt that he knew something that others did not. He saw himself as older than his peers. One afternoon, while playing in the yard with Neka, she suddenly whispered, "Do you want me to tell you something interesting?" "Something only grown-ups know," Neka said in surprise. "What?" Kemba smiled mysteriously and didn't continue. He just said, "I'll show you one day." Neka laughed and thought this was another one of Kemba's usual jokes. But for Kemba, this was just the beginning. His mind was filled with images and questions that no one was willing to explain to him. And now, the first dangerous sparks were slowly making their way into his and Neka's relationship. Mbari's mornings were always filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sounds of street vendors. Neka would look out the window at the courtyard and think about Kemba's mysterious words, "Something only grown-ups know." The sentence remained like a stain on the mirror of her mind. The more she tried to erase it, the more it became clear. In Amala's house, everything was orderly, but this order sometimes turned into offense. Neka had to finish her homework by 7, take a shower by 8, and sleep in her room until 9. On the door of her parents' room hung a small sign, "Knock before entering." For Neka, this sign symbolized forbidden, a place where her questions would go unanswered. That night, as Amala was washing the dishes, Neka approached hesitantly. "Mom, can I ask a question?" Amala said without looking. "Ask quickly, my daughter. There are some things that adults know and children don't. Why?" Amala paused. The sound of the water stopped. Her gaze was serious. "Neka, everything has its time. You need to think right now. But if I have a question, who should I ask?" "From me. But not about topics that are not in keeping with tradition." The answer was short, but it made a tall wall. Neka took a deep breath and stepped back. She knew that if she insisted any longer, her mother would accuse her of being superfluous. However, her mind did not rest. At night on the bed, she looked at the ceiling and said to herself, "So when will the time come?" The next day at school, the art bell, the children were drawing. Kemba sat quietly behind Neka and said, "Are you still waiting to know what that interesting thing is?" Neka raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to tell or just make a fuss?" Kemba showed her small, half-open notebook, but quickly closed it. "Not here. After recess, by the baobab tree." When recess was over, Neka stood in the shade of the baobab, her heart pounding. Kemba arrived with a smile, looked around and whispered, "These are the things parents do at night. You think they only have school and work, but there's a hidden part." Neka frowned. "How do you know?" Kemba paused, then said in a tone that tried to sound adult, "I saw." Neka's eyes widened. "Did you see?" "It was an accident. Then I got curious." "And then what?" "Then I realized that some things can be learned even if someone doesn't teach you." The word "learned" rang in Neka's ears. She thought of her house rules, of the knock on the door sign. She hovered between fear and curiosity. "And why are you telling me?" Because we're always going to be friends. That's what our mums say, right? Neka said nothing. She felt the ground shake a little under her feet. Before saying goodbye, Kemba said quietly, "If you want to know more, there's a way. But we have to be careful that no one finds out." That evening, Amala checked Neka's school bag as usual. The notebooks were neat, the crafts were clean, but something was ticking inside Neka. She wanted to ask, but she was afraid of being judged. At dinner, Amala talked about grades and great opportunities, but Neka thought the real opportunity might be passing through the window right now, and she didn't know whether to take it or let it go. At night, when the lights went out, the sound of parents' quiet conversations could be heard through the half-open door of the hall. Neka closed her eyes and tried not to fall asleep. A simple question kept running through her mind. Why does it turn into a red line when I ask? The next morning, before leaving the house, Amala said to Neka, "Remember to come straight back after school." Mom's eyes. But in her heart, straight meant no answer. She didn't want to run away from the rules. She just wanted someone to talk to. On the way to school, Kemba whispered in her ear, "After science today, come to the old barn by the playground." "It won't take more than 5 minutes," Neka bit her lip. She looked around, at the children walking past them without a care. Then she said quietly, "Just 5 minutes." These 5 minutes were to change the fate of their next few days. 5 minutes that hung between the rawness of curiosity and the weight of responsibility. That afternoon, the sun was hot and heavy as always. When the bell rang for the end of science class, the children poured out the door with a bang. Neka, however, quietly gathered her things and fixed her gaze on Kemba. She left the classroom with a mysterious smile and headed straight for an abandoned warehouse next to the playground. The warehouse was old, with cracked walls and the smell of damp wood. Few people visited it, except when a ball or sports equipment went missing. Neka entered with a trembling heart. Kemba was sitting in a corner with his small notebook on his knees. "You've finally come," Neka said hesitantly. "Only 5 minutes." Kemba opened the notebook, drawings full of intricate lines and shadows that were strange to a teenager like Neka. He paused for a moment, then quickly closed the notebook. His heart was beating fast. Did you draw these yourself?" Kemba nodded proudly. "Yes. No one has seen them but you." Neka felt something between fear and curiosity tighten in her throat. "But why are you drawing these?" "Because I saw them. Because I want to understand." "Didn't your mother say anything?" Kemba laughed. "My mother is always tired. She never looks at my notebook." There was a heavy silence. The children's voices came from afar, but it was as if they were in another world. Neka suddenly said, "My mother never lets me talk about these things." "She says it's too early," Kemba replied confidently. "Then let me teach you. We have to figure it out ourselves." This sentence was like a lock being opened. From that day on, their visits continued. At first, they just looked at the desk and chatted briefly, but soon they had a more detailed plan. At recess, when the children were playing in the yard, Neka and Kemba would quietly leave the classroom and go to the old school toilets, a half-abandoned building with rusty doors. There, in an excited silence, they would talk about things they still didn't quite understand. The first time they stayed for only 5 minutes, with shy looks and nervous laughter. The second time they talked more. The third time, Kemba said, "Nobody will understand this way." The teachers will think we went to the toilet. Our classmates are busy playing too, Neka asked quietly. What if they find out? Nobody will understand. This is our secret. That word was sweet and dangerous to Neka. She felt like she had something that the whole world didn't know about. She, who had always lived under her mother's strict rules, was now tasting freedom and the forbidden. Days passed and the visits became more frequent. Each time the time went on longer, each time the boundaries of their curiosity went further. From the look and the word to the touch of Kemba's notebook and vague explanations. She herself didn't know exactly what she was saying. She was just repeating her incomplete experiences. But for Neka, that was enough to make her feel like she had entered an unknown world. Neka's behavior slowly changed. In class, she was distracted, constantly looking at the clock. During recess, she became restless. When Kemba passed by the classroom, she would also leave under the pretext of going to the bathroom. But these changes did not go unnoticed. In Neka's class, there was a girl named Ifeoluwa, a smart, calm, and precise girl. Her mother was a nurse and had talked to her about bodies, boundaries, and respect since she was 10. Ifeoluwa was the first to notice that Neka and Kemba's interactions were not normal. At first, she tried to ignore them, but Neka's anxious gaze, her frequent absences, and secret chatter with Kemba were disturbing her. One day, after math class, she asked quietly, "Neka, why do you always make excuses when Kemba walks by?" Neka was taken aback. She said sharply, "It's none of your business." Ifeoluwa said nothing, but decided in her heart that if things continued, she had to do something. The secret meetings continued without Neka knowing that someone was watching her. The secrets that were supposed to remain between the two children were gradually becoming heavier, and the risk of being discovered was closer every moment. Days passed, and the secret between Neka and Kemba grew heavier. For the two of them, these secret meetings were like an exciting adventure that only they knew about. But for Ifeoluwa, everything was taking on a dangerous hue. She was a quiet girl, but her sharp gaze never missed a thing. Every time recess ended, she would see Kemba walking down the hallway, and just minutes later, Neka would raise her hand and ask the teacher for permission to go to the bathroom, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes more. When she returned, she seemed distracted and restless. One afternoon, after science class, Ifeoluwa couldn't take it anymore. As the children were packing up, he quietly approached Neka and asked, "Neka, I know you might hate me, but why do you always leave class after Kemba?" Neka was flustered. Her eyes filled with worry. She tried to stand firm. "Why are you following me?" "I go wherever I want." Ifeoluwa sighed. "I'm not following you. I'm just watching. I'm worried. The things you're doing aren't normal." Neka quickly picked up her things and said, "It's none of your business," and ran out of the classroom. Ifeoluwa stood there and watched him go. She said to herself, "This isn't just curiosity anymore. If I keep quiet now, it might be too late." The next day, she made her decision. When the bell rang, the scene repeated itself as usual. Kemba walked slowly past the classroom. Then Neka took leave and left. This time, however, Ifeoluwa did not accompany them. She went straight to the teacher's office. Mrs. Ombanda, the class teacher, was sitting at the table drinking tea. Ifeoluwa said politely, "Madam, can I tell you something?" "Tell me, dear, what's wrong?" "I think something is happening in school that shouldn't be happening." It's about Neka and Kemba. The teacher frowned. What do you mean? Be more specific. I've seen them both leave the classroom at about the same time for the past few days and head for the old toilets. They stay there for a long time. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I'm sure something's not right. Mrs. Ombanda half sat down. She put down her cup of tea. His tone became serious. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. I've seen it many times. The teacher thought for a moment, then quickly stood up. He strode towards the bathroom building. The sound of his shoes echoed on the mosaic of the corridor. When he reached the door of the last cubicle, he stopped. He knocked several times. Who's in here? Silence. The only sound was the wind blowing through the broken window high in the wall. He knocked again, harder. I know you're here. Come out. A whisper came from behind the door. Then Kemba's trembling voice. Me, ma'am. I was just going to the bathroom. Mrs. Ombande frowned. Her tone was cold. And I know you're not alone. Both of you come out. No answer came. The whispering continued. The teacher stepped back and exhaled greedily. Without a pause, she ran towards the principal's office. A few minutes later, the principal, a tall, serious woman, returned with her. Her steps were heavy and her voice was firm. If you don't open the door, I'll break it down with the key now. A long silence. Suddenly, the lock turned. The door opened slowly. Neka and Kemba emerged with their heads down. Their faces were red, their eyes fixed on the floor. Neither of them dared to look at the teacher or the principal. Mrs. Umbanda said in a quiet but firm voice, "To the principal's office." Right now, the children moved on without a word. In the corridor, the curious gazes of their classmates weighed heavily on them. Their great secret was revealed in a twinkling of an eye. Ifeoluwa saw everything from a distance. Her heart was beating fast, but she knew she had done the right thing. Sometimes you have to be brave, even if your friend hates you, he whispered to himself. The principal's office smelled of old paper and fresh coffee. The thick blue curtains were drawn down and the room had a heavy, formal feel. Neka and Kemba were sitting side by side on a wooden bench. Their heads were down as if the ground had swallowed them. The principal, Mrs. Oduji, was sitting behind the desk, adjusting her glasses on her nose. Across from her stood Mrs. Ombanda, the class teacher, explaining the story. Her every word was like a fresh knife piercing the hearts of the two children. Madam Principal, I have noticed their simultaneous absences many times. Today, when I went to the bathroom, I heard them chatting. I'm sure they've been doing this for a long time. The principal nodded and said in a calm but heavy voice, "This is not a small matter. We need to inform their parents today." He picked up the phone on the table. First, he called Amala's house. His serious, formal voice filled the air. "Miss Amala, please come to school immediately. There is a serious matter concerning your daughter." A few minutes later, he called Sophia's house. His tone was just as cold. Time passed slowly. Neka wiped her tears with her sleeve. Kemba was silent, chewing on her fingers. Neither of them said a word. Finally, the door opened. Amala entered first, her face flushed and her eyes full of worry. Sophia hurried after her, still wearing her work uniform. Their eyes fell on the children, and as soon as they realized their situation, the color drained from their faces. "What happened?" Amala asked in a trembling voice. The principal motioned for them to sit down. Then he explained everything in detail. The secret meetings, the arrest in the bathroom, and their silence when the teacher asked them to come out. Amala put her hand over her mouth in disbelief. "No! Neka! You!" Neka lowered her head. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Sophia put her hand on her forehead. "Kemba, why?" I thought you were an innocent, carefree boy." The principal continued quietly. "We know that children may not have done much more than talk, but the fact that they are engaging in such conversations at this age is a sign of danger. The main responsibility lies at home. School is just a part of their lives." The room fell silent. The ticking of the wall clock could be heard louder than ever. Finally, the principal announced the verdict. The school council has decided to suspend both students for a month. This will be an opportunity for families to talk more seriously with their children and show them the right path, Amala sighed. Her eyes filled with tears. Sophia was stunned and kept whispering, "A month? Oh my God!" Neka looked at her mother quietly. Her gaze was full of pleas for an explanation, for a conversation, for breaking the wall of silence. But Amala was in shock. Kemba didn't dare look at her mother either. In her heart, she knew that everything had started on those nights when her parents had been careless. The moderator ended the meeting with a sentence that stuck in everyone's mind. "Children see and learn more than we think. If we remain silent, they will find their own way, and that way is not always safe." As the parents left the office with their children, the school was filled with whispers. The news of Neka and Kemba's arrest in the bathroom had spread like lightning among the students. There were looks, secret laughter, and whispers. Amala held her daughter's hand tightly and prayed under her breath. Sophia, however, walked silently and helplessly. They both knew that this would be the beginning of a greater crisis in their homes. At night, Amala's house was plunged into a heavy silence. Neka sat in her room, staring at the wall. Her mind was filled with the scenes that had happened that day at school, the loud knock on the teacher's door, the cold look of the principal, and the shocked face of her mother. In the living room, Amala paced many times. When her husband, Obiora, came back from work, he told her everything. Obiura's voice echoed through the house like an explosion. "What? Our daughter in the bathroom with that boy?" She angrily walked towards Neka's room, but Amala stopped her. "Dash, wait. Let's talk to her calmly first." "Calmly? This disgrace is gone. The whole school is aware." Finally, Neka was called. She entered the room trembling. Obiora asked directly, "Tell the truth. What were you and Kemba doing there?" Neka said tearfully, "Dad, we were just talking." He said he knew things that the elders did. I asked him. He even showed me his paintings. I didn't understand anything. I just wanted to know. Amala's heart broke. She remembered the night Neka had dared to ask her a question, and he had angrily replied, "These things are not in keeping with tradition." Now she could see what the result of that silence had been. Tears welled up in her eyes. She sat down next to her daughter and hugged her. "My daughter, it's my fault. I should have talked to you. I should have explained to you. But instead, I kept quiet and left you alone." Neka put her head on her mother's shoulder and cried. Obiora took a deep breath. She was still angry, but seeing her daughter's tears made her heart tremble. At the same time, Sophia's house was not quiet either. Macau was pacing angrily and shouting, "Where did our son learn such things?" Sophia lowered her head in shame. It's my fault. I saw him many times coming into the room at night without air. We just shouted to him to get out. We never explained to him. We never told him that these things were private. Macau slammed his hand on the wall. We neglected, and now that neglect is destroying everything. Kemba was sitting quietly in the room. When his parents entered, he did not look up. Sophia said in a quiet voice, Kemba, why did you do this? Why did you draw a picture and show it to Neka? The boy answered with a trembling voice, because you never said anything. I saw many times. I wanted to understand. I thought it wasn't a bad thing, because you did it too. I just wanted someone to talk to. Sophia burst into tears. For the first time, she realized how her silence and indifference had led her child to dangerous curiosity. Macau sighed and said, We have to make amends. Before it's too late. In the days that followed, the two families met several times. Obiora was still angry and wanted to complain, but Amala calmed her down. No, it's not just their fault. We made mistakes too. We should have talked to our children. Sophia and Macau confessed with shame. We left the door open. We weren't paying attention. Now our son is paying the price, and your daughter is hurt too. We ask for your forgiveness. The atmosphere was filled with tears and silence. Finally, Obiora said, We're sorry, but we have to leave this neighborhood. My daughter needs a fresh start. It was a tough decision, but it seemed necessary for Neka's future. That night, when Neka was in her room, Amala sat next to her. She took her daughter's hand and said, From now on, no question will go unanswered. Ask me anything you want to know. I will not be silent anymore. Neka smiled for the first time, wiped away her tears and said softly, Will you promise? I promise, my daughter. And right there, in the midst of a crisis, a spark of healing was ignited. A few weeks later, Amala and Obiora's family set off on a journey. The old neighborhood, with all its bitter memories and heavy gazes, was left behind. They moved to another city, a quieter city that could be a new beginning for Neka. The new house was not big, but it was filled with a different silence, a silence that came not from fear, but from peace. Neka had a simple room with a window overlooking a small courtyard. The first night, when she sat on the bed, her mother came to her side. The dim light above them was on. Amala said, My daughter, from today on, ask me anything you want. About your body, your feelings, even things that you find strange or embarrassing. I will stay by your side, Neka whispered with tears in her eyes. Mum, why didn't you do this before? Because I thought silence meant protection, Amala grumbled. I didn't want you to know anything too soon. But now I understand that silence means leaving you in the dark. That night, for the first time, Neka asked her questions without fear, about relationships, about personal boundaries, about the confusing emotions of adolescence. Amala answered honestly and calmly. Sometimes the words were hard, but she didn't run away anymore. Over time, there was a clear change in Neka's behavior. She paid attention to her studies again, her smile returned, and she no longer felt anxious during recess. She made new friends, and most importantly, her relationship with her mother became a true friendship. Meanwhile, in the old neighborhood, Sophia and Macau also made a big decision. They took Kemba to a counselor. The sessions were long and hard, but little by little, Kemba learned to recognize her feelings, to channel her curiosity, and to be more honest with her parents. One day, Sophia went to see Amala in the new town. They sat in the courtyard of the small house, cups of tea in hand. There was a heavy silence between them. Finally, Sophia said, "We were wrong. We thought that fatigue from work was a sufficient excuse for inattention, but now I understand that every door left half open draws a child's mind into a world it is not yet ready for. And I thought that strictness and silence meant protection. But this silence pulled my daughter in another direction." The two women saw a common truth in each other's eyes. Neither had chosen the right path. Months later, Neka wrote an essay in the new school's essay class entitled, "Silence is not always golden." He wrote, "When a child asks a question, it means he is looking for a light in the dark. If we turn off the light, he will find his way by dangerous lights." I understood this with my own skin and bones. After reading the text, the essay teacher said with a smile, "This is one of the best pieces of writing I have read this year." The story of Neka and Kemba may have seemingly ended, but its message still resonates in the ears of all Ambari parents and teachers. Dear parents, silence does not bring security. Ignorance does not bring innocence. If you do not explain, the street and friends and random scenes will explain, and those explanations are not always correct. Dear teachers, don't just keep your eyes on the books. Pay attention to the shy looks, repeated absences, and strange behaviors of your students. A simple question or a timely intervention can save a future. Silence is not a shield. Education is a shield. Are you ready to talk to your children about the truth, or do you still want to wait until it's too late? Write to us in the comments, because your conversation can help many other parents. If this story was informative for you, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other true and cautionary stories. This can be important for both you and your children's future, and by sharing this story with others, you may be able to save a family from a major crisis.